It's been in the back of my mind for quite a while, the whole climate change debate, environmental issues growing, pollution. So I've always felt very strongly about it, and I've been watching very carefully.
The palace gates are closed tonight, but the world is watching every move. Hours ago, Buckingham Palace released a statement that left the nation in shock, and cameras captured Prince William's silent drive through Windsor, his face a mask of quiet anguish. His expression was sombre, eyes heavy with emotion. What could have happened inside those royal walls to push Britain's future king to the breaking point? This isn't just another royal update. This is a moment that could alter the monarchy forever. Stay with us as we uncover the heartbreaking truth behind the palace's announcement that has left millions speechless. The breaking silence was shattered. Just after sunset, a single notification lit up phones across Britain. Buckingham Palace issues urgent statement. Within minutes, television networks cut from regular programming and reporters crowded the palace gates, breath puffing in the cold night air. Pens ready, cameras poised. The royal crest appeared on screens, and the tone was unmistakably grave. For a family so often guarded and careful with words, the sudden release sent shockwaves across the world. Inside Kensington Palace, Prince William was said to be in quiet meetings all evening. His schedule abruptly cleared, those closest to him whispering behind closed doors. The signs had been there for those who watched closely. The faint smiles at recent events, the subdued energy, the way his eyes searched the crowd instead of the cameras. Something heavy had been weighing on him, and now the world finally knew why. The statement itself was brief, just a few lines crafted with typical palace restraint, yet it carried a depth of emotion that required no further explanation. His Royal Highness is deeply saddened by recent developments and asks for privacy as the family navigates this difficult period. No further clarification, no reassurances, just silence and endless speculation. As reporters read the lines aloud, time itself seemed to stop. Every word was dissected, every pause analysed, every nuance scrutinised. Was this about King Charles's health, a decision about the line of succession, or something far more personal? Royal correspondents suggested the situation had been quietly developing for weeks, hidden behind smiles and carefully planned appearances. Prince William had just returned from a private engagement in Norfolk, where locals noticed him distracted, even distant. When asked about his father's condition earlier in the week, he gave a short but telling response. "We take things one day at a time." Behind those words was a son watching his world shift in ways he could not control. Camera flashes painted a haunting contrast. William, the poised heir, suddenly exposed to the weight of unseen burdens, suddenly caught in a storm that no training could prepare him for. The man who had always carried himself with composure now faced a private trial under the public eye. His journey had been under the spotlight, from the young boy walking behind his mother's coffin to the man rebuilding the monarchy alongside Catherine. Yet on this night, the public saw something they had never witnessed before, a glimpse of the burden behind the crown. Eyewitnesses in Windsor reported seeing him arrive late in the evening, car escorted by security. Palace lights burned long past midnight. Rumours swirled that senior aides and family members were gathered for an emergency meeting, though no one would confirm the reason. Across social media, messages of concern and sympathy poured in, marking the beginning of a royal turning point that would echo far beyond the palace gates. As dawn broke over London, one question echoed through every newsroom and living room alike. What has happened to Prince William? The night air hung heavy, tension thick. Chapter 1 ended in uncertainty. By morning, that uncertainty had consumed the nation, turning into a collective obsession. The palace's vague statement left room for imagination, and the public filled it with fear, sympathy, and wild speculation. Morning headlines screamed heartbreak, crisis, and royal shock. Television anchors struggled to keep up with the swirling rumours. Some whispered that the king's health had suddenly taken a turn for the worse. Others suggested a private matter had pushed William to the edge of emotion. Yet behind those stone walls of Windsor and Buckingham, the truth was known to only a handful of people. Prince William, ever the image of calm duty, had always been described as steady, composed, a man shaped by responsibility rather than impulse. But those who had seen him in recent days spoke of a quiet restlessness, an undercurrent of worry that was impossible to ignore. A royal staff member who had served the family for more than 2 decades told a reporter under anonymity, His Royal Highness has been carrying the weight of something very personal. The source did not elaborate, but the tone suggested sorrow, not scandal. In a world where the line between public and private life barely exists, William's rare silence spoke louder than any formal statement could ever do. Cameras caught him the following morning as he stepped out of his car outside a charity headquarters in London. He gave a polite nod to the crowd, but avoided all questions. His face looked pale, his jaw set. Photographers shouted his name, desperate for a comment, but he simply walked on. That fleeting moment was replayed across every television screen in the nation, becoming a symbol of composure under immense pressure. Royal experts began revisiting old interviews, analysing footage of William speaking about family, his mother's legacy, and hopes for his own children. The more they watched, the more the story seemed to carry an undercurrent of tragedy. "He has always been a protector," one commentator noted, and protectors are often the ones who suffer in silence. Behind closed doors, aides moved carefully, keeping the schedule minimal. Catherine, Princess of Wales, was seen driving through Windsor with their children, her expression firm yet tender. The family's usual grace under pressure was evident, but the atmosphere around them felt fragile, almost sacred. Even the royal household, known for its discipline, seemed unusually subdued. By the second day, speculation reached fever pitch. Newspapers and digital outlets each offered their own version of the truth. But through it all, one fact remained clear. Prince William's heart was heavy, and whatever the palace was hiding was deeply personal. Something inside those gilded walls had altered the man destined to be king. The nation waited, breath held, as whispers grew louder. Whatever was coming next would not leave the royal family unchanged. By the third morning, the calm facade of the monarchy began to crack. What had started as whispers had become a storm of headlines. Crisis in the palace, Prince William facing the hardest decision of his life. The media's tone had shifted from curiosity to alarm. Every hour brought new theories, each more dramatic than the last. Yet behind the palace doors, there was no chaos, only silence. The kind of silence that comes when everyone knows something but dares not speak of it. Prince William had not been seen publicly since his brief charity appearance. His car had returned to Windsor, disappearing behind the iron gates as reporters shouted his name. For the public, the lack of visibility only added to the tension. The man who had grown from a grieving boy into a symbol of hope had suddenly withdrawn from the spotlight. Some said he was at his father's bedside. Others claimed he had flown to Balmoral for a private family meeting. The truth, however, was that he remained in Windsor, torn between duty and heartbreak inside the private chambers, meetings stretching late into the night. Advisors and senior courtiers spoke in low tones, deliberating what to reveal and what to conceal, just as the world waited, breath held, for the next chapter in this unfolding royal saga. Every word mattered. Now the palace understood that once the truth emerged, it would not only affect the royal family, but the very stability of the monarchy itself. Prince William, according to a close aide, had spent hours alone in his study, poring over a folder marked confidential. Its contents, insiders later revealed, were life-altering. He had been warned for weeks that this moment would come, but he had not expected it so soon. Across the country, television commentators replayed old footage of him with King Charles, trying to interpret gestures, glances, and subtle smiles. The public wanted to believe the father-son bond remained unbreakable, but something in the air felt distinctly different, almost fragile. One royal correspondent described it as a quiet unravelling of trust. The words struck a nerve across the nation. Catherine remained composed. She carried out a small engagement with children at a local hospital. Her warmth was unchanged, but her eyes reflected something deeper. Concern mingled with quiet strength. "She's the pillar right now," an observer remarked, holding the family steady while everything around them trembled. By the end of the third day, the palace issued a brief follow-up. The Prince of Wales continues to focus on his family and official duties. Further updates will be shared in due course. The statement calmed no one. Analysts immediately noted a glaring omission. The king had not been mentioned once. In royal language, that omission spoke volumes. The nation braced for the inevitable. Something monumental was unfolding behind closed doors, and Prince William stood at the centre, poised between the heartbreak of a son and the duty of a future king, carrying an emotional weight few could imagine. By the fourth day, the atmosphere around Windsor had turned heavy with anticipation. Reporters camped at every entrance, cameras flashing at every passing vehicle. The world knew something was happening, but no one knew exactly what. After the palace's latest statement, the silence felt deafening. The absence of King Charles's name from the official note sent tremors across Britain. Speculation ran wild, but one story dominated the headlines. The king's health had taken a critical turn. Prince William was now preparing for an impossible transition inside the palace. The mood was tense, somber, and electric with anticipation. Courtiers moved with quiet urgency, their expressions strained but disciplined, in a private room overlooking the gardens. Prince William sat alone, the weight of centuries pressing down on his shoulders. He had spent much of the previous night reading official documents, letters from senior government figures, confidential briefings, and constitutional protocols, all suddenly painfully relevant. Each line felt heavier than the last. He was no longer just the son of a monarch. He was the man Britain would turn to in its hour of uncertainty. Those close to him said he barely slept. He had spoken briefly with his brother, Prince Harry, in what one insider described as a tense but heartfelt exchange. Old wounds resurfaced, yet urgency overshadowed the past. William needed his family now more than ever, even if distance and time had built walls between them. Meanwhile, Catherine did everything possible to maintain normalcy for their children. She shielded them from the noise outside, keeping their world calm while the rest of the nation roared with rumours. The Queen Consort, Camilla, was said to be at King Charles's side at Clarence House, surrounded by physicians and advisors. Late-night motorcades between Windsor and London only fueled public frenzy. Every passing black vehicle or ambulance was magnified, analysed, and discussed endlessly. Yet the palace's refusal to release details only deepened the mystery. William's closest aide later described him as resolute but heartbroken. He had been prepared for royal duty since childhood, yet nothing could prepare him for this moment. The crown had always symbolised destiny, but now it felt like a burden of profound loss. Those who saw him that evening reported long walks through palace corridors, pausing before portraits of his mother and grandmother, two women who had carried their own sorrow beneath the weight of the crown. Outside, the press was relentless, but among the British people, curiosity turned to compassion. This was no longer about gossip or power. It was about a son watching his father's light dim. And as night fell over Windsor once more, lamps along the long walk glowed softly against the mist, as if the world itself was holding its breath for what tomorrow would bring. The palace confirmed events the next morning. On the fifth day, an eerie stillness blanketed the grounds. Gates remained closed, curtains drawn, the world watching in anxious silence. Then, just after 9 o'clock, the announcement came. The Royal Communications Office released a short, carefully worded statement confirming what many had feared. King Charles was stepping back from all public duties due to a serious medical condition. The tone was formal, yet unmistakably emotional. His Majesty is receiving the best possible care at Red and has expressed his full confidence in the Prince of Wales to oversee royal affairs during this period. In just a few lines, the balance of the monarchy shifted. Prince William, who had stayed out of public view for nearly a week, became the focus of the entire nation. News presenters spoke of a moment of quiet transition. Commentators began using new terms, acting sovereign and temporary stewardship. This was not abdication, not yet, but it was the clearest sign that the crown was preparing for change. Cameras turned to Windsor once more, hoping to glimpse the man now shouldering both duty and grief. Inside the royal residence, the atmosphere was reverent and strained. Staff moved carefully, speaking in whispers. King Charles's condition was grave, and while doctors remained hopeful, uncertainty hung over every corridor. Prince William had spent early hours with his father, sitting in quiet conversation. Aides described few words exchanged, but the emotion was undeniable. This was not just the passing of responsibility, it was a sacred exchange between father and son, between two kings, one reigning, one rising. Later that afternoon, William appeared at Buckingham Palace gates to greet the waiting crowd. Dressed in a dark navy suit, he looked composed, yet marked by exhaustion. Cameras flashed as he approached the microphones. His voice, steady but heavy, filled the air. "My father has devoted his life to service. He continues to inspire strength, faith, and duty. As a family, we stand united, and we ask for your prayers." The moment was brief, but it moved the nation. Inside, Catherine waited with their children, keeping life as normal as possible. She had become his anchor, the quiet strength beside the future king. The palace confirmed she would take on additional engagements in the coming weeks, signalling preparation for responsibilities ahead. As night fell over London, news anchors described the day as historic. Beyond the formal headlines, something profoundly human unfolded. A son had stepped into his father's role, not through ambition, but necessity. Palace lights burned long past midnight, and though the world slept, Prince William stayed awake, watching the future arrive 1 hour at a time. The public reacts. The 6th day dawned with a grey, solemn sky that mirrored the nation's mood. The air outside Buckingham Palace was heavy with quiet reverence, the kind that only follows moments of profound change. The news of King Charles's health had settled into every household, and across Britain, church bells rang softly in prayerful solidarity. People gathered near the palace gates, holding flowers and cards addressed simply, "For His Majesty." It was not grief yet, but it was close. A collective ache in the hearts of a nation sensing that the crown itself was trembling. Prince William began the day surrounded by advisors, ministers, and senior courtiers in an emergency meeting at Clarence House. For the first time, he presided at the long oak table where his father once led discussions with unwavering composure. Now the responsibility rested fully on him, and the faces around him looked to him for guidance. He listened more than he spoke, absorbing every word, his expression calm but unreadable. Those in the room later described an atmosphere thick with both admiration and sorrow. One official quietly remarked, "It was the moment he became king in everything but name." Outside, the press continued its vigil, capturing every movement. Every royal motion was reported in real time. Helicopters hovered low over Windsor, hoping for any sign of the king's condition, but inside, a delicate choreography was underway. Senior aides coordinated between medical staff and the Privy Council, while communications teams drafted statements balancing hope with caution. The Queen Consort, weary but steadfast, remained at the king's bedside, her presence both comforting and heartbreaking. At midday, Prince William made his way to St. James's Palace to meet the Prime Minister. Cameras followed his every step. His face bore the unmistakable marks of sleepless nights, yet his voice remained measured and firm. Sources close to Downing Street later confirmed the meeting was deeply emotional but dignified, focusing on continuity, stability, and the line of succession. By afternoon, the weight of leadership had fully settled on his shoulders. Catherine was seen briefly leaving Windsor with the children, likely shielding them from the growing tension. Her calm presence inspired the public. Newspapers described her as the quiet guardian of the next chapter. Royal watchers praised the couple's unity. The world began to see in William and Catherine not just royalty, but resilience. They had become the human face of a monarchy in transition. As evening fell, Buckingham Palace released a brief but poignant update. His Majesty remains under close medical supervision. The Prince of Wales has assumed additional responsibilities with the full support of the royal household. The words confirmed what many already knew. The shift was now official. That night, as lights glowed across London, William returned to Windsor and stood for a long while on the balcony overlooking the gardens. Below him, the grounds were silent, save for the rustle of wind through the trees. He thought of his mother's quiet strength, his grandmother's unwavering duty, and his father's lifelong devotion to the crown. The world watching. But in that moment, he stood alone. No longer just the heir, but the guardian of a nation's heart, carrying the crown's unspoken weight into a future that had already begun, with Catherine's quiet strength beside him. The morning of the 7th day brought a fragile calm to Windsor, though nothing felt ordinary. The palace courtyard, once bustling with daily routines, now carried an almost sacred stillness. The previous night's announcement had settled like a shadow over the kingdom. Though official words remained measured, the truth was clear to those who read between the lines. King Charles was gravely ill, and Prince William was now the face of the monarchy. The transition had begun, not with ceremony, but with quiet sorrow. Outside the palace gates, a sea of flowers continued to grow. Children wrote messages on handmade cards, pensioners bowed their heads in prayer. tourists watched in reverent silence. News networks around the world carried live coverage from Windsor, anchors speaking in hushed tones as if any loud word might disturb the fragile peace inside. The kingdom had entered a waiting season, and the man at the centre of it all, Prince William, carried both dignity and pain with remarkable grace. That morning, he met privately with senior aides to prepare a nationwide address, his first public statement since assuming full responsibility for royal duties. Every word mattered. The Prime Minister was briefed, security increased, and television networks instructed to clear schedules for the evening broadcast. Inside the palace, the gravity of the moment was unmistakable. One aide later recalled that William spent several hours rewriting his speech by hand, refusing to rely solely on advisers. "It has to sound like me," he said quietly. "People need to know I'm speaking from the heart." Meanwhile, Catherine moved discreetly through the residence, comforting staff and ensuring the children remained calm and unaware of the mounting tension. She had become a silent pillar, the gentle force holding everything together. Her steady presence brought peace to those around her, even as her own heart must have been breaking. By evening, the palace announced the time of the address, 8 o'clock. As the hour approached, millions of viewers across Britain and beyond tuned in. Screens faded to the royal crest, then to Prince William standing at a podium in the blue drawing room of Buckingham Palace. He wore a dark suit, his voice steady but touched with emotion. "My father has always been a man of vision, of faith, and of unwavering service. In this challenging time for our family, I want to thank you all for the kindness and compassion you have shown. The King continues to receive the best medical care, and we remain hopeful." He paused. The silence was heavy. "As I take on additional duties, I do so with humility and with deep respect for the trust placed in me. My father taught me that leadership begins with service. That will remain my guiding principle." When the broadcast ended, the nation exhaled across living rooms, cafes, and hospitals. People wiped away tears. The words had not confirmed tragedy, yet they carried the weight of impending change. That night, as London lights dimmed, it was clear the monarchy had crossed an invisible line. The future had arrived, and Prince William had stepped fully into it, calm, resolute, and heartbreakingly human. The morning after Prince William's address, Britain awoke to a rare stillness, as though the entire country paused to absorb the weight of his words. The speech stirred emotions worldwide. Admiration, empathy, and an unspoken recognition that something irreversible was unfolding. Not just a prince, but a man burdened by love and responsibility, a son walking the delicate line between hope and farewell. At Windsor, dawn broke gently over the castle grounds. Inside, corridors were lined with fresh flowers sent by citizens and leaders alike. A soft scent of lilies mingled with the quiet hum of staff moving discreetly between rooms. King Charles remained in a private suite under close medical supervision, with only a handful of people allowed to see him. Among them was Prince William, who spent much of the night by his father's side, holding his hand in silence. Doctors spoke cautiously, but their expressions told a story no one wanted to hear. Catherine arrived mid-morning, calm and reassuring. She embraced Camilla softly, the two women united by shared strength. In this time of waiting behind closed doors, they spoke briefly about the children, keeping life as normal as possible, and about the heavy weight of public duty. Catherine's grace under pressure was earning her quiet respect across the nation. Newspapers called her the unshakable heart of the royal family. Outside the palace, lawns were filled with reporters, cameras trained on every window. Yet even the media had grown subdued. There was no sensationalism, only respect. The gravity of the moment had silenced even the loudest voices. Commentators replayed William's address on loop, dissecting every pause, every flicker of emotion. "He's not just leading the family," one royal historian observed. "He's preparing the people for what comes next." That evening, a small but profoundly significant moment took place. William, accompanied by Catherine, met privately with senior members of the Privy Council and the Archbishop of Canterbury. The meeting was not officially disclosed, but insiders later revealed it centered on constitutional preparation. The language was careful, but the purpose was clear, ensuring a seamless transition if the unthinkable happened. Later, as the sun disappeared behind the palace towers, William stepped outside alone. The gardens were quiet, bathed in a soft golden hue. He gazed toward the horizon, his mind heavy with the realization that time was slipping away. Every royal before him had faced this moment, in one way or another, the loss that comes before the crown. He whispered a few words to the wind, words only he and God would ever know. Across the country, candles flickered in windows. The British people, so accustomed to royal endurance, now felt something intimate and fragile, a shared vulnerability with their future king. The next day, the palace would release another statement, but that night, between fading light and deepening silence, Prince William stood between two worlds, one still clinging to the past, the other waiting patiently for its new king, a son's solemn promise. The 9th day began with the tolling of church bells across the United Kingdom. They rang slowly, solemnly, echoing through cities and villages, through crowded streets and quiet countrysides alike. Just after 7 in the morning, Buckingham Palace released the words the nation had prayed for yet dreaded. It is with deep sorrow that His Royal Highness, the Prince of Wales, announces the passing of His Majesty, King Charles III. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Every television station broke into mourning coverage. Every news anchor's voice trembled as the weight of history settled upon the nation. The new day had arrived, cloaked in grief. At Windsor, black flags were raised to half-mast. Inside the palace, Prince William stood silently at a window, staring into the grey sky. His father was gone, the man who had guided him, challenged him, and prepared him for this moment. And yet there was no time to linger in sorrow. Duty was already calling. Within minutes, aides and officials filled the corridors, finalising details of the transition. Operation Menai Bridge, the carefully orchestrated plan for the king's passing, moved into motion with precision and reverence. The young prince, who had once walked behind his mother's coffin, now found himself standing at the threshold of the throne. Catherine entered quietly, her eyes steady but resolute. She took his hand, and for a brief moment, they simply stood together in silence. No words could capture the depth of what they felt. Then, with a deep breath, William turned away from the window. "It is time," he said softly. He was led into a private room where members of the Privy Council awaited. Cameras were absent, but the significance was monumental. With the stroke of a pen and the solemn recitation of an oath, the Prince of Wales became King William V. Outside, thousands gathered before Buckingham Palace, many holding candles and photographs of the late king. Some wept openly, others stood in quiet reflection. Reporters spoke of unity, of endurance, of the profound connection between the people and their royal family. The world watched as history unfolded in real time. Within hours, messages of condolence flooded in from presidents, prime ministers, and dignitaries across the globe. Amid all the ceremony and official statements, the new king remained deeply human. A son still mourning a father, trying to stay strong for his children, a husband leaning on the woman who had become his greatest source of peace. That evening, King William addressed the nation. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried the sorrow of a man who had loved deeply and lost profoundly. "My father lived his life in service," he began. "He taught me that leadership is not about power, but about compassion. Today, I promise to continue that legacy, to serve with integrity, faith, and love for the people of this nation." When the speech ended, silence filled the air once more, not the silence of shock, but of reverence. Candles burned late into the night. The reign of King Charles had ended. The era of King William had begun. And though the kingdom grieved, it also hoped, because in the midst of heartbreak, a new light had quietly begun to rise. And there you have it, one of the most emotional and defining moments in modern royal history. From a son's heartbreak to a nation's transformation, Prince William's journey from heir to king has captured the world's heart through loss, duty, and grace. He now carries the legacy of his father and the weight of a crown forged in centuries of tradition. As Britain mourns King Charles and embraces a new era under King William, one thing is clear: history is being written before our eyes. If this story moved you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest royal documentaries. Share your thoughts below. What do you think this new chapter means for the future of the monarchy? Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.